mean, it's pointing straight at me.
That's crazy.
Okay, let's
You
see.
maybe have it like, are you on a laptop?
Yes, yes, I'm on the laptop.
Do you have a camera that can face either direction, like forward or backward?
I have no idea.
Okay, because mine does that. So sometimes like I'll be looking at something on the other side of the screen and I'll be what shows up. So I don't know, maybe flip the camera if it's there, but
Let me see. Would it be under apps?
I don't know actually. I think you could probably usually reverse it in Zoom. I think, let me see if I can figure. Oh, in Zoom. I don't know. I have not used Zoom for quite a while since my district swapped to Teams over COVID. Yeah.
Okay, question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
good. Same thing. I haven't used Zoom in like probably a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me. It's gotta be a bit.
Okay, I see rear integrated webcam, e-glass app cam, but it's
I don't know.
currently on
Okay.
rear.
Shoot.
Hello, it's me. It's integrated webcam.
Okay.
Okay, can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
That's advanced settings. I never go into advanced settings.
No, I mean it. Oh,
Sorry, my dog very much wants to be a part of this.
I love it.
No. Okay, did I miss anything or was it just setting up the Zoom?
Yeah, mainly just getting set up, saying hi.
Okay. I think
Hello.
it's auto recording because I set it to just record the whole thing.
It is. It is. I
Is
see the
that what you
recording
guys see
button.
too?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna kick my dogs out of my room. Hey, Kate, I'm on a Zoom call. Can you just keep the dogs out here? Oh, sorry. Okay, does anyone have any ideas for how we want to start or?
I think we should start with basically with each describing if it's a good book based upon what we discussed in the prior week of what's considered a good book, writing style versus the content. So we can all start with just giving us an overview of where we believe this book falls. Is it a good book? And then what is the reasoning behind your decision on what's a good book?
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is. I was actually surprised how much I engaged with it as an adult and considered some of the issues that it brings up. And I think it does a particularly good job of bringing up some really fraught issues and dealing with them complexly and in ways that are not simplified or cut and dry. I think especially like the ending is left fairly open-ended. Like we don't see where things go. We don't see what the end result of some of the changes that are starting to take place are. And I think that plays into some of that complexity as well. So, I mean, I think all in all, it really grapples with some issues and doesn't make them simpler than they really are, which I think is very important when it's a book dealing with pressing issue like this one. And I think there's a tendency to want to make things a lot simpler sometimes, but it's really not. There's a lot of issues that have to be dug into here to really arrive at meaningful change. So I guess that's kind of where I would start. So just in terms of the complexity of its storytelling, the complexity of the themes, I think it has a lot of merit.
Okay. So would you think it was a good book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yes. So very engaging. Yes. Now, what I will agree with, being that I am African American, and of course, this is a book that is catered toward real life connections in an African American community. So, you want to make believable, realistic characters. And honestly, I believe that this is a good book. The way that she includes colloquialisms of the African American vernacular and different things like that, it really incorporates what it is. And what I love about it is that a lot of times people don't understand that there are different versions of yourself. And that was one of the themes of this book was Star and her struggle with self and being who she really wants to be. And that's definitely something that is prevalent in the African American community where you don't want to come off as that single story. That's something that we did discuss in our classes about the single story and the stereotypes. And it's if you do just a little too much, then oh my gosh, she's just like they are, right? So that's what Star was grappling with was the trying to ride that line. And so I really think that it resonates very well with what an African American teenager grapples with a lot of the time. And I think my biggest issue overall is that, we've discussed the lack of diversity in literature and different things like that. And I think my biggest issue is that, yes, is it graphic? Yes, I'll agree. It is graphic. But one thing about minority and African American communities, if you're not familiar with it, they have high domestic IQs. And when it comes to educational IQs, they may sometimes fall below. But if you were to test a minority on domestic IQs, they're going to probably score in the adult level. So even though this is a young adult book, and you say, oh my gosh, this isn't anything for, teenagers, 12 to 18-year-olds, but this is what they face. And so I think with the intellectual freedom and the book bans that are currently constant with trying to suppress that part of life, it really removes the ability for individuals to be able to look into the window. There's that theory of mirrors, windows, and glass doors. And even though, yes, it's not a reflection of you, it's not a reflection of your community, but it's a reflection of someone's community. It's a reflection of someone's life and their reality. So this is a realistic, believable character. And so, of course, I do say that this is a really good movie. And Dan, on your part, you said how the ending was open-ended. Honestly, I believe that there may be a sequel coming for this particular book. Angie Thomas did write a prequel. So this text came out, and then in 2021, she did release Concrete Rose. And Concrete Rose is a prequel to The Hate U Give. So if you're interested in, trying to follow the story and the backstory of her father, then you would want to read Concrete Rose.
Okay.
And I am a teacher at a ninth grade campus, majority minority. We have like 58% is African American, 42% is Hispanic. And these are the books that they are because they can relate to it.
Mhm.
So, you know, I thought it was a good book. Sorry. But yeah, I really think it was a great book. And it really touched on a lot. And I really think that more people need to read these types of books because it does allow you into the world of what a lot of minority children and families grapple with on a daily basis.
Hmm. I agree. I also thought it was a good book. I could not put it down. I mean, the second I started it, I was just like, and I mean, it grabbed you from page one, you know, like the book I read the previous week, I was kind of dragging myself through the first few chapters before I really got into it. But this one, it was like, man, page one, it just grabs you and pulls you in.
Mhm.
I did notice on Goodreads when I was doing my review that it had in parentheses #1 behind the title. So I think you're right. I think book #2 is coming because I was like, book #1, what are you talking about here? But I did, and I thought I like made a mistake. I was like, did I add that? And then I was like, no, that's just how it's titled.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting that what you were talking about with the single story thing. It's like Star kind of created single stories for herself between her different communities. Like she created multiple single stories, and I think we all do that to some extent because you have to, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I just thought it was really beautiful how she was like proactively trying to merge her stories into like one complex character at the end, like not just, you know, these flat versions of herself for each group, but
Right.
like, no, let me be a complex person that can be more than one thing. Um, anyway, I was curious about what you guys thought about the ending. I kept going back and forth, like halfway through, whenever it was you realize that she's gonna have to testify, like I kept thinking, so is there going to be justice or not? Like, is this officer going to get, you know, put on trial or sent to jail or whatever definition of justice is? I was like, I kept thinking, well, surely they're going to bring him to justice. Like, you have to end that way. Like, I kept in my head, I kept thinking, like, I don't know. I guess I want everything to have a happy ending. So I was like, there will be justice. That has to happen. And then I kept thinking, no, that's too easy. It can't end like that. And then I was like, well, what realistically, what has been happening in the world? And I was like, okay, so if we're following what's happening in the world, then no, there's not going to be justice. Like, and then I thought, but this is fiction. So maybe we get to have a good ending. I don't know. I just kept going back and forth. I love how it ended. I think it was, I mean, not, not that there was like nothing, not, I love how it ended like, oh, I wanted the police officer to get off, but like, I love how she wrote it because it was both realistic, but it gave you hope. And I don't know, I was just floored. I mean, I just thought it was such an amazing book.
No, I'm with you, and I think the choice of ending in the way that she did has a lot to do with the themes too, and I think it comes back to sorry. And I wrote about this in my discussion post, but the idea is less about like I before I read the book, I kind of assumed it had a lot to do with speaking out and the importance of speaking out, and it does, but it's really more, I think, about the importance of creating an environment that listens, because
Mm.
no change actually happens except when there's a conversation happening. Like we see small level changes in the community at the end of the book where, you know, they're helping each other out. Big Mav's helping Devontae get out of gang life, these kinds of things. So there's these small scale changes happening, and the more dominant segment of society still has chosen not to listen. And so, like, the larger changes are still to take place, hopefully at some point. So I think a lot of what the book ends up being is kind of an exhortation for us to actually listen and hear and see each other, and
Mm.
less about like you know, it's important to speak out. Like, yeah, it is, but it's even more important that
Correct.
Y'all have said so much that I wanted to say, but I really, really loved this book. I loved Star from the very beginning. She just seemed so authentic and real, and I got really invested. in her and with her. And every time she did something I didn't like, I was like, oh, do it like this, Star. But she just, her transformation for me was kind of what I thought was the biggest, I don't know, aha for me for this book, because the way she started and how she saw herself was as Big Mav's daughter that worked in the store. Like nobody even knew her name in the beginning. And she really felt that,
Mm.
you know, she was part of this one community where they didn't know her name, but that's where she felt more like herself. And then this other community where she could basically do no wrong and everybody thought she was so cool, but she couldn't ever really be her authentic self. So I really liked her transformation into this person that she felt comfortable with and like she could grow, because I felt like, I don't know, finding her voice meant more than just activism to me in
Yeah.
this book. It was just finding her voice as a person.
Mm.
And I felt like towards the end, at the end, she had finally felt herself. Like she had found where she wanted to go, and maybe it was in the activism direction, which it's kind of what it seemed like to me, which was amazing. Because she went from not even being able to barely be herself to, you know, trying to get to her authentic self. And I really like that part of the book and everything else y'all said.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll say as well, to add to that is, you know, finding herself in a community where the police are not viewed as friends of the community, you know, and a lot of times, even today, you know, of course, this book was not written that long ago, but, you know, that is something that has been in the African American community for, we can say, centuries now, you know, and so it's called snitching now. Don't snitch to the cops, right? But you know, this goes back to slavery era, you know, when they had slaves that were running away. They were running north, you know, and so back then they would post signs, and they would post the signs and say, "Hey, don't talk to the police," because the mayor and the aldermen have um, given them power to be able to kidnap you, to catch you, to return you, and to do whatever they want. So the signage would always tell them, if you want to protect yourself as well as your community, the welfare of your community, then do not talk to the cops. So this is something that has gone from 1851 to present day. You know, so it's something where they never felt comfortable, you know, with trusting the police. So it's not just, oh, well, they have to be doing something illegal. You know, we have to go back to the origin. Well, where did it come from? Right. So it's not just that she's struggling with her own internal battles of speaking and being that voice, but it's also being strong enough to speak for the community, even when it can upset some people. You know, it's still, I'm going to speak for the community, because in order for change, we do have to speak up and have a voice, you know, and so that's what I found. It just resonated with me because I am familiar with that. And again, that takes me back to, this is a book that is basically on the book ban list. Several school districts ban this book constantly, you know, and it's like you're taking away so much, because there's so much history. Even though this is fiction, you know, it's so much that we don't learn, and this is one way for children to be able to learn that side of things. And it goes back, I would like to ask y'all, what did you think about Haley and her actions? You know, how did you feel about, you know, how did you feel about her Anybody chime in and tell me your thoughts on Haley.
I think Haley was a bully. I mean, I think she said whatever she wanted and she didn't really care who it hurt. And she was saying it to girls that feel the need to stand up for themselves. And when they finally did, she got kicked to the curb and it was great.
So do you think she said those things out of ignorance? Do you think the things that she said, the way that she behaved, do you think it was out of ignorance, or was it that she was a bully?
I think she was a bully.
You
I
just
mean,
think she was-
I don't think she was ignorant. I think that she just said things that maybe she heard her parents say or her friends say and was disregarding the people that she was talking to, because it was kind of a they were kind of having like a power conflict, right? Because Haley was kind of in charge of them and they just kind of followed along with her until they didn't anymore. And
Right.
they took the
Right.
power away from her, which I thought was fabulous.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that like we see her inability or unwillingness to really hear Star and her perspective on things. And then that's juxtaposed to Chris,
Yeah.
you know, this white boyfriend who is willing to kind of hear things out and actually engage in like a good faith attempt to see somebody else's point of view. So I think it really, regardless of how we label the character, I think she at the very least lacks empathy, and it's meant to kind of emblematic of what happens when we do lack empathy or dealings with other people.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I kept thinking, FYI, it's telling me that we're running out of time
No,
with Zoom. I can't remember what the time limit is on Zoom. Is
10
it
minutes, I think.
how much
somewhere.
is it? Like 40? How much
I think
is
she
it?
said at least 10 minutes for the video.
Oh yeah, no, I know, but
know
Zoom
what-
with the free account, they
Oh,
only
I-
let you talk for like, oh, it's saying we have 16 minutes left to talk. Just
Oh.
FYI.
okay. Perfect.
I think with Haley, I kept thinking like, oh, she's repeating what she's heard her dad say. Like I just sort of assumed that. Because I think they said that she had lost her mom at some point in the book. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, so
Yeah.
her dad's like sitting at home watching Fox News and like spouting hate, and she's just like kind of copying that. And then I just thought like, I wonder if she's still going to talk like this in college. Like, I wonder, I don't know, like, is there room for growth for Haley in the future? I don't know. I hope so. I
Mhm.
also, it reminded me of like Mean Girls and like Queen Bees. I mean, I think that Mean Girls and Queen Bees are pretty universal. You find them everywhere. But this had a much deeper, much more depth to it. I don't know. I mean, she was a really frustrating character. I also think, I don't know if you guys are going to find this interesting or not. The whole time I was reading the book, every time they brought up the dog Bricks, I was like, tell me more about Bricks. And because I'm, a crazy dog person. And then like she would say something about like Bricks being chained in the yard. And I kept thinking like, oh, please bring Bricks inside. Why are you chaining him in the yard? And like and then they get the brick through the window. And I'm like, did they kill the dog? Like that is just where my crazy dog mind goes to is did the dog die? I don't want the dog to die. And then at the end, they're talking about like when they're having that conversation with Chris and Star, and I don't remember who else is I think Seven is in the car too. I don't remember if Devontae is. And they're telling him like all the crazy things that like white people do. And one of the things they say is like, you treat your dogs like babies. And I was like, and here I was this whole time being like, poor Bricks.
I'll tell you.
I was like, thank you for putting Bricks inside.
Dogs are not common to be indoors in African American communities. However, in the past few years, they have passed a lot of laws where, having the dogs outside and heat and different things like that, it has changed, but just as a preface, most of the times they're outside animals. So yeah, Bricks was where he belongs.
Sorry,
You
that
know,
was just a weird side note that I was just like rabbit trailing on there.
right. It's more like the doghouse, you know, Tom and Jerry, you have.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, but like I said, I really enjoyed the book, you guys, and there is the prequel if you're interested. So it goes more in depth with the King Lords and you know her father's origin story, you know. Um so
That is interesting because it did feel like that's a story waiting to be told. Like whenever they kept referencing it, it felt like there needed to be a prequel,
Yes.
basically.
yeah, yeah. So did you all get the physical copy of the book or did
Yeah,
you read it digitally?
Physical.
yeah, I took it
Physical?
out of
Physical? Okay.
Yeah.
So did you see the cover
Yes.
of the book and
Mhm.
what it actually spells out
Yes.
when you
The
Yeah,
look at it vertically? Thug.
Yeah.
the
Yes, yes. And I honestly, I think Angie Thomas did that intentionally because if you watch the climate and just the way that the news stories have been told, you know, it's almost as if they're demonizing the victims, right? And
Mhm.
so thug is what you will typically hear, you know, when you're listening to the news stories, you know, they begin to just change the narrative. And I think that's one of the reasons why she did that is because she was trying to say, you know, there's always a reason or a story behind a story, you know, being, I guess, a product of circumstance. You know, just because you do something, everyone makes poor choices, right? Um, not saying that anyone is better than anyone else, but does that really mean that you deserve death? Right? Just
Right.
because you may have done something that is not um, legal, right? But does that mean that it warrants your death? You know, and I can actually empathize with Badge 115 as well as, you know, Khalil. You know, it's a very sad story, you know, and but it's true. In the African American community, those stories are, you know, the explanations are told to you how to behave, you know, when you're pulled over, because you never know what can happen. And so just seeing that and knowing that all he wanted to do was check on her,
Mm.
right? Even
yeah.
though he was the smart boy, he wanted to know why was he being pulled over, right? But how many times do people say that? Right? When they're pulled over. But that doesn't mean that you're going to, you know, do something that could harm the officer, right? But when you do have that um implicit bias, sometimes it calls you to react to things that may not be there. And that's where my empathy comes for Badge 115. You know, it's that single story effect, I would say, that even he had, right? So is he a monster? I'm not going to say he's a monster. You know, we're all human, right? But just having those implicit biases, sometimes you don't even realize that you have. You know, I'm not going to say that I'm free of them. You know, I have a lot of single stories. And as we've watched these various TED Talks, for this course, it's like you start to realize, wow, I didn't even realize that viewpoint that I had, it was pretty not in my in group, right? So yeah, so I could empathize with several of the characters, but Haley was one that was very difficult to be able to empathize with, you know. So yeah, I really think this is a good read. And this would definitely be something that I would like to have in, you know, the library, um, you know, for students to be able to read and connect and be able to empathize, because that's the bottom line, you know, to be able to empathize with others that are not like you. And I just believe that whole Williamson versus Garden Heights is a great example of, you know, trying to ensure that they wanted the best for their children, even though they may have been in a bad community, right?
Right.
They still had the means to be able to at least give their children a head start so that they were not going to be a product of their environment.
Mhm.
I think the sad thing too is like the places that are likely the ones that really need that empathy lesson the most.
Right.
I mean, I think, you know, one of the advantages to narrative is that it gives you kind of an experiential window into somebody else's existence that I think can provide a lot more empathy than most other ways into somebody's head. And yeah, I know Katie, for example, has banned the book. Like you mentioned, there's who knows however many other local districts, and you know, these are the places that have the ability to choose not to hear the message. And
Exactly.
I think that's one of the big questions that the book raises too, is what happens then when, you know, the dominant party is willing to continue to tune it out. We see a lot of the aftermath at the end of the book with her lobbing the tear gas canister back, for example, because, you know, there's a justified frustration that comes with trying to, you know, speak out in the ways that are allowed or that are acceptable. And then once those are exhausted, what do you have left? And in some ways, I think bands like this kind of force us to ask that question just again and again and again. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, I have family that